D3 football preseason rankings have just been dropped. This is the first of what will probably be a couple different outlets that put out Division 3 preseason rankings. These ones, Jimmy, coming from Lindy Sports. Give me the initial impression from the top 10, dude.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward here. I mean, I don't think it's super difficult to do like preseason rankings. I mean, I was kind of surprised that Johns Hopkins at 3. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, no brainer with North Central at 1, Mount Union 2. So I mean, other than that, I mean, there's a lot that could change throughout the season, obviously, but expect North Central and Mount Union to be 1 and 2 for most of the way.
Absolutely. You look at the two teams appearing in the Stagg Bowl just a year ago. If you are the champion, in my opinion, you'd have to make a very strong case to be anywhere except for number 1, especially if you are North Central, of course, with the track record they've had in recent history. You go down the list, North Central at number 1, Mount Union at 2, Johns Hopkins coming in at number 3, Susquehanna at 4, and number 5, Hardin-Simmons down in Texas, St. John's at 6, Bethel out at 7, so 2 MIAC teams there back-to-back. At number 8 out of the ARC is Wartburg. Number 9 is UW La Crosse, and number 10 is Cortland, for those listening, to get all those names out there. And now we get to kind of dive into this, and I think this is something where we're not necessarily here to talk about what teams should or shouldn't be in the rankings. We're going to give you the breakdown of every team here, giving you 3 kind of key important details or information about these squads heading into 2025, and then maybe one thing that might hold them back, one thing that could be a detrimental factor for these squads heading into this season. And it should be noted too that information on this stuff this early on in the preseason, especially at the Division 3 level, is incredibly hard to come by. We're trying to make that better for y'all, trying to bring you some of this information. So Jimmy, I think with that being said, let's get this thing started with North Central, huh?
Yeah,
I'm
head
excited
coach
about
Brad
this
Spencer.
this group, man. I think this is going to be another really quality North Central team. And I will say, before we get going to Athlink, is where we get all of our information on transfer portals and other players. We mentioned things throughout this segment. And Jimmy, the main thing has to be the main thing with North Central. Brad Spencer, still at the helm for the Cardinals, and that means there's going to be a lot of success with this squad. He's led them to 3 straight national championship appearances. Of course, has won 2 of those games, most recently taking it over Mount Union. And then you go to the quarterback room. You're bringing in a lot of competition there. We'll talk about Luke Landon in a second. This is a room that, through the transfer portal, the Cardinals have already supplemented with some outside talent. A couple of the guys are more of the status quo, guys who maybe are from the Naperville or more Illinois area, go off to a higher level D1 or D2, don't get the snaps or love they thought they would have received, and then found their way back to the hometown team. But there are a couple others in that room that have taken a little bit more of an untraditional path to North Central. I'm excited to see that. It's nice to bring in one new guy. It's even better to have really good competition for him, make one of those guys have to earn that spot. And I think the final point you need to know about this North Central team is the defense. It's always slept on. It's always overlooked because of guys like Lanin and guys out of the backfield like Sacco and these guys who have had these incredible seasons and performances for North Central. The defense is very commonly overshadowed. They are going to be a big piece of this squad, and they have already in the past. They've shown up in the playoffs for these teams. Guys like John Sullivan on the D-line, back for another go-around. He had a 15 TFLs a year ago. Vincent Jacob, 5.5 sacks, ready to be disruptive on the line of attack there. And that kind of brings me to my last piece. No more Luke Lanin, the Gallardi Trophy winner, gone, currently in the UFL. I had a stint here with the Renegades, still, I believe, with them. We'll see how that shakes out over the course of the next season. He's a consummate winner, I think, in every term or phrase of that word. How do you go on without Luke Lane and the guy who has come to represent North Central, dude? That's the tough part.
Yeah, and we're going to find out obviously. And with North Central's offensive scheme, I'm sure they're going to be just fine. I think they'll have a guy come in there and ball out, but it's going to be tough to replace Luke Lanning without question. So we got Mount Union here at number 2. Head coach Jeff Dart continuing just dominance in over there. 56-4 record as a head coach with 5 straight OAC titles. Not only that, but they have 30. They're going for their 36th straight OAC title this year, Kobe.
That's unreal.
Kind of ridiculous. I mean, just we've talked about the dominance of Mount Union before. They're also trying to extend their regular season win streak to 74-0. Just absolutely marvelous what's going on over there at Mount Union. Trying to get their 14th national championship last year. Came up short, and now that's what this year's for. They can get their number 14 this year. Quarterback Noah Beaudry, guy to definitely look out for. Weston Arthur, DB, and then obviously last week we talked about Giovanni Kennedy leading the offensive line, that run game, but obviously Caleb Brown, also a stud edge rusher for them as well. But losing Echeverry, they could have maybe a little bit of a trouble with that run game, but their O-line is just so dominant to where I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. But It's obviously, like we said about Luke Wayne, it's really tough to replace your superstar on offense for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, but at the running back position, there are times where you can maybe get away with when you have a really quality offensive front five in that unit. It's not to say that you could put anybody running back there and have that same production, because that would be absolutely lying. And looking at what he's been able to do, and then even getting some pro looks after last season, which was exciting to see. I think it was with the Bucks that he received an invite. I have to double check, but that's a neat deal. Another stat that I wanted to pull up here, Jimmy, and take a look at the rankings since 2003. The D3Football.com top 25 rankings. Mount Union has been ranked in every single poll since 2003 in the top 25. That is a ridiculous stat. Now, 7 other teams have been ranked 200 plus times. Mary Hardin Baylor's in there at number 2, Lynn Field at the top of that list. But Mount Union, every single poll since 2003, I just need to say that one more time, has been in the top 25 in the country. And of course, at the number 1 spot 131 times in that time span, Jimmy. Graphic courtesy of D3 Data on Twitter. They do some fantastic stuff. Give me the reaction to that, dude. You talk about a legacy and a long-standing program of tradition. That many times you're at the best of the best.
I have no words, really. I mean, those stats speak for themselves. I mean, I have nothing to say about it. I mean, holy cow. Like, what? It almost doesn't make sense, but then it also does because it's Mount Union. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And to keep things going, let's talk about coming in at the number 3 spot, Johns Hopkins, the Blue Jays. They're 12-2 a year ago. This is a team that has a proven track record of dominance, and dominance at home, I think, is a really key piece of understanding what the Blue Jays have been able to accomplish. But in 2024, semifinal appearance, 2023, made it to the quarters. They're 13-2, Jimmy, at home in that time span. They do not lose games on their home field. Their playoffs, regular season or otherwise, it's very difficult to go in there and get a win. Now, running back, Jeff Shorter, that's a guy you need to know about coming into this next year. 750 yards or so, 5 touchdowns in 2024. He'll be back for his senior campaign behind, again, we talk about a pretty dominant offensive line game. This has been a ground and pound team that has changed their identity, I think, over the last course of a couple seasons. We've seen them attack and get after it offensively in a variety of different ways. The ground game has always been a constant for Johns Hopkins. And, inside of the Centennial, there's not a front 5, I believe, better than this Johns Hopkins attack squad. And then you look on the other side of the ball, an anchor defensively for them. Carson Bordeaux, a veteran leader coming back, that side of the defensive ball. We had him on the show way back when. Might have to follow up with Carson here coming into this season. But the one thing that I think Johns Hopkins really has working against them, look at their schedule going into 2025. This is probably one of the toughest non-conference schedules, if not the toughest in the country. You look at their 3 non-conference opponents, Ithaca, John Carroll, and Susquehanna. Those are the 3 that they schedule out of conference outside of Centennial. Those 3 teams combined to post a 27-9 record in 2024. Just absolutely incredible. Their gauntlet of the first 6 games of the season is going to tell us a lot about this Johns Hopkins team. They could go from 3-1. They could go from 3 to left out. And that's in the first 3 weeks. That's going to be something that we see with a lot of these teams. But Johns Hopkins, I think, has it more than most. That one slip up, and you could be digging yourself out of a pretty deep hole. They've obviously gone and scheduled those games because they feel they are playing at that level of competition and can compete with that caliber of program, right?
Yeah, certainly. And they could also make their strength of schedule and strength of record bigger, better for the playoff tiebreakers, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Talk to me about one of those opponents they got.
Yeah, so the Riverhawks are at Susquehanna, 12-1 last year, winning their second straight landmark conference title, advancing to the Division III playoff semifinals, I should say. It's the first time since 1991. With the absolute thrilling victory over Hobart last season, 42-35. That was a really, really great game. And then obviously last year, just an extremely high-powered offense, 45.5 points a game, which is 10th in the country, and 511 total yards a game at 3rd in the country. So they can light up the scoreboard for sure. Josh Ehrlich, landmark offensive player of the year, 2,400 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a semifinals for the Gagliardi last year. Another name to watch for them on the defensive side of the ball is Brian Layton, all-region defensive lineman.
Gallardi, Jimmy. You got to remember Gallardi, brother.
Yeah, Gallardi. That's what I said.
Okay.
I said Gallardi. Go back and watch
roll the tape.
Roll the tape. Yeah, we got it on tape. I said Gallardi. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. And then obviously the defense had 33 sacks and 16 turnovers too last season. So these guys have a big wall on defense. I mean, they can definitely make some stops, turn the ball over. And Tom Perkovich, entering his 11th season as the head coach, 72-22 record.
Man,
not bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. And
100%.
back-to-back landmark titles, 2023 and 2024 as well. So they do have a couple offensive linemen to replace, so keep an eye on that one. But I'm sure they'll be just fine.
Yeah,
They'll be just fine.
absolutely. And that's a team that, again, we talk about. I put them right in almost the category of the Cortland, the Grove City, of some team that maybe a little bit further out east. They're in Pennsylvania, so not necessarily on the coast. But this is a team that kind of came from, I'm not going to say nowhere. They've been around, but they came in and really surprised some people just a few years ago, and they've built this thing into what is a national semifinal type contender, a team that believes they can compete for national championships. And they've done it very quickly. And this has turned from, again, a feel-good story into a team that has kind of really told people, hey, we're not going anywhere. This is something that we're planning to stay kind of the top of this national conversation. They're doing so far, and we'll see if that carries over. Again, obviously, Johns Hopkins, we talked about having Susquehanna on the schedule. That means the opposite is also true. So they're going to have chances very on to prove themselves. The offense from the Riverhawks is going to be, again, the mainstay for them. Can the defense step up in some of those games and help carry them through when the offense is a little bit slower earlier on? We haven't seen that a lot so much in terms of their offense has been able to click pretty early in games, but there will become a time where, as an opponent, they find a way to lock them down at least for a quarter or for a half. Can the defense step up in those instances and keep the boys going over there? So that's about it on Susquehanna. Let's move over to the next topic of conversation, that going down to the Lone Star State, man. Hardin-Simmons, the team that has been one of the best down there. And I say one of the because of recent, they have been the team to trump over Mary Hardin-Baylor. Now, maybe not when it mattered last year in the playoffs. And that's my first reason why I think this team really deserves to be talked about more going into the 2025. There has to be a fire lit down there under the ass of every single player, coach, staff member, community member in that Hardin-Simmons program, because you go and you beat Mary Hardin-Baylor, I believe twice in the regular season, and then you go because of the scheduling conflicts in the ASC, and then you go into the playoffs and you fall to them when it potentially matters most. And that is going to be something that, again, I've never been in their facility, would love to be. That better be put up on every poster, on every weight room rack, on every piece of the locker room. This is why we're doing all the things we're doing now in the offseason, so we never have to experience this again. That's my first reason why this Hardin-Simmons team should be dangerous. Now, on the actual on-field component of this, Jimmy, 4 of their 9 all-region players return from a year ago. They have a core group of leaders and playmakers inside of that group. One of them, running back Noah Garcia, almost 900 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns last year, was a big part of their ground game. Look for him to take an even bigger role and become a true bell cow for this Hardin-Simmons offense and kind of a leadership role in that. Now, talked about UMHB earlier. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. That is the biggest obstacle for this Hardin-Simmons team. As the ASC continues to grow a little bit with expansion of teams like Schreiner, McMurray, some of these other squads, UMHB is still in the ASC. And as long as they are, that game is likely to decide, one, who wins the conference championship, and of course with that, who is going to the national playoff and has a quote-unquote easier road of doing so given the auto bid. So it feels unjust to talk about one of these teams without the other because they have been so intertwined as of late. This Hardin-Simmons team, though, what you need to know about them is that they're going to be explosive, they're going to attack, and I think they're going to be poised for a really big breakout year, Jim.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think like you said, it's really, really hard to beat a team 3 times. Like last season, I mean, Hardin-Simmons might have been the better team over the year, but it's really hard to beat a team 3 times, and they've obviously fallen short in the playoffs there. But moving over to St. John's, the Johnnies. Gary Fashion coming in his 12th season as head coach, 110-20 as a coach, 6-time MIAC Coach of the Year, and they coming off a MIAC championship last year as well. They might have a little bit of a new defensive scheme with Coach Novak in his first season as a defensive coordinator. So defense should be solid over there. They do have a little bit of graduation turnover. They're losing a couple key starters, especially on the D-line. Should test their depth quite a lot. And obviously, their offense is playmaker central. I mean, they've just got tons and tons of guys that can go out and make plays. Mm-hmm. They have a really seasoned player core. I mean, they have tons of guys that can do what they got to do. And another thing I want to mention, attendance at St. John's is ranked 2nd in Division II. An average attendance last year, so they always have a really, really good home crowd.
That's
the
awesome.
Home field advantage can be big for them. But another thing, like, can they make the Final Four? Can they make the national championship? Like, can they make those strides to get back to that realm of prominence? Because obviously, like, they're going to go and win 9-10 games this year. But can they go get a ring? Can they go host a trophy above their head? I'm sure that's what they're all talking about right now. They can go win the MIAC, they can go do this and that, but they want to win the big one.
Yep. And to do that, Jimmy, They got to go around this Bethel squad, right? That is the obstacle inside of that conference. That is the obstacle for the St. John's team. They were able to do it, not once, but twice last year. These two teams faced off twice inside of MIAC play. St. John's, they got the better half of Bethel. My number one note for this Bethel Royals team is that you have dominated, it's in all caps here, inside of conference play, against everyone except for St. John's. That is the proverbial hurdle for this Bethel team. They got beat twice last year by the Johnnies. The rematch, Jimmy, this year set for October 4th on Bethel's home field. That will be kind of the decider inside of conference play, and again, with a lot of playoff implications on the line. Now, this Bethel Royal squad, 11-3 a year ago, did a lot of great things defensively. Of course, Matt Young, the guy who a lot of people know the name of, going on to play at Wisconsin. Yeah, that's a big loss for them. I'd be remiss to sit here and tell you it wasn't. He was one of the, if not the best playmaker on the defensive side of the ball in the country, relative of any level of football. He put up those type of statistics, but they had a lot more going for them than just the DB core. I don't know if you know this, Jimmy. They had the most sacks in D3 football last year. 66 times they were able to bring down the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage.
That's a lot of sacks.
66?
That's a lot of sacks. It's a lot.
That's like a stupid number.
What? They played 14 games last year. That's like 4.8 sacks a game.
Yeah, it was almost 5. It's like a stupid number. 66 sacks a year ago. They have been able to get to the quarterback better than anyone in the country, obviously, in that time span. A lot of it, of course, comes down to having quality players. But a big piece of that is scheme. Can you draw up pressures? Can you draw up different ways to trick the quarterback and offensive line to get them into a advantageous or disadvantageous position, depending on the side that you look at it? You can definitely expect that scheme, those different blitz packages and other ways they're able to get to the quarterback to shine through no matter who is at these spots, because they're going to return some talent. Now, of course, on that defensive line, you miss a couple big-time playmakers that are obviously going to make that number. You'd imagine it won't be 66 again, but you never know. And, I think the other piece of this is that they've got strong young leadership with Mike McElroy at the helm. He is a defensive mastermind that's got some good coaching experience, a lot of years of great ball ahead of Coach McElroy down there with Bethel. And from what I can tell, all three first-team All-American selections from a year ago are gone. So they're going to be needing new people to step up at those positions. Young was one of them. They had a defensive lineman that was the conference player of the year type caliber player. And you're going to have to replace those guys. And you're not going to be able to replace their production, but you're going to have to figure out how you can fit other people into the scheme and make them accomplish the same kind of deals there, Jim.
No, certainly. And then jumping down to Wartburg here, 10-2 last season. Coach Chris Winter entering his 5th season as the head coach, going 43-7 over his last 5 seasons. Pretty good. They're at number 8. Good. 3 ARC titles, back-to-back years. 3 Conference Coach of the Year awards, and a National Coach of the Year award in 2022. So they have definitely some very strong leadership over there for the Knights. Very stable offense coordinator situations too with Matt Wheeler and Matt. I know it. Tishetter. I'm sorry, I've just botched that name. Pardon me, folks. But Dawson Rudd, coming off a great season last year, returning as their primary rusher, had a huge game against Platteville last year, running for 155 yards in that playoff game. They have a really balanced, powerful offense. They're going to have a really solid year. And obviously, we talked a lot about really good defensive fronts. Wartburg is one of them. Just year after year, just elite defensive front seven. Very, very stout run game, generating turnovers like crazy. They have tons of really, like I said earlier, they built their coaching staff on experience and leadership, and they've been very stable in that regard. And then Watson Hoover Stadium also gets pretty lit too. I mean, they're going to have a pretty strong crowd there just about every night. And then, like we said about St. John's, can Wartburg take down a team like North Central? Can they take down a Mount Union? Can they do this? Can they do that? And I think they can.
Yeah. They were very close very recently. That North Central Wartburg game, they've had multiple big-time matchups, but that playoff match, I believe, was a semifinal. That was a down-to-the-wire type performance, I believe, 2 years ago, I want to say off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yep. I was live tweeting during that game. I actually remember that. That was a really good game.
It was nuts. And, to keep things moving on, this is something that, we can talk about a little bit, but the only WIAC team included in this top 10, Jimmy, that being UW Lacrosse, the Eagles, coming off an 8-4 season that I think a lot of people, maybe from the outside in, thought was disappointing, but you look at the schedule they had, and yeah, they dropped a couple games that I'm sure Coach Janis and company would like to have back. they have a lot of things to be excited about going into this year. Matt Janis, start with him. 4 straight playoff appearances coming out of what is far and away the nation's toughest conference, right inside of the WIAC. Consistency is key with him. Can you take the next step? We talked about that with a couple of these teams. If you are lacrosse, can you go and win the conference outright and give yourself, unlike last year, give yourself that predetermined spot in the playoffs, and then from there earn yourself home field advantage like we saw them do 2 years ago, right? North Central had to come to their place to play on their turf, and that game turned out to be incredible. So can you do that if you're Matt Janis and company down there? The running back, Gabe Lynch, the dude is deceivingly powerful. We've seen it in person, watching this guy play. He is a great mix of speed and power that comes in a small package. I think people underestimate him on a week-to-week basis. You look at the stat line for him, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns in 24. He's joined in the offensive backfield by Kyle Haas, the quarterback there. 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns a year ago, Jimmy, to only 6 interceptions. Coming into a season that he should be, from what I can tell, the true quarterback one in that system. What we can tell, though, about the guys down at UW Lacrosse, they're not afraid to put multiple guys in that role. They have a revolving door, so to speak, at that position. We saw it with guys like Helterbrand, who maybe brought a different spin and flair to the quarterback position and using his legs in the way they were able to utilize him. It will be interesting if they forego that style, with Haas seemingly coming back with the most experience inside of this offensive playbook, or if they continue to bring in and supplement with some other skill sets around a guy like Kyle. But again, the one thing kind of holding them back, like many of these teams that play in these tough conferences, one slip up could cost you a conference title. And in that case, it could be a playoff berth, because you lose one game, all of a sudden you might be out of WAC contention. Now with a team or a conference like that cannibalize each other week to week, you never know. Of course, we saw how it planned out this year with Platteville taking the crown when it came down to it. But there's zero room for error in the conference. And I think that's the one thing that is going to be either great or it's going to hurt a team like UW Lacrosse, man.
No, for sure. And a lot of people kind of had their eyes, they're like, what? Lacrosse got in the playoffs this year? Like, what? They went 7-3. It was kind of like one of those things. It's like, you get in. But I'm sure there's a lot of teams in the WIAC that want to see them not do very well. But
I'm sure the sentiment goes both ways all around. I believe that, dude. I believe it. Finish us off here, number 10.
Yeah, the Red Dragons at Cortland, obviously coming off a great season last year, ranking 3rd nationally in scoring with 55 points per game. Very startling, eye-popping numbers there. Also 516 yards per game. Just a very high-octane air raid and run game as well. But they're losing their boy, Zach Boyes. Really good guy, really good player. Really good player. So we'll have to see what they do at quarterback. But obviously, Cortland's a very, very prominent program, very successful, long track record of success. I'm sure they'll find a guy that can come in there and ball out for them. But it should be a 4-way battle between Joe Young, Craig Galea, Steve Atremba, and Mikey Riskindio. Sorry, guys, Riskindio. But they had a 4-way battle this spring with those guys. It's just I was just digging some stuff up. That's what I found. But their defense is also not too shabby as well. 11.5 points a game last year, 13th nationally, and this was that really stood out to me. They held their opponents to a 21% third down conversion rate on defense.
Yeah.
That's how you win football games right there. Getting stops on third down. Like, that is so big right there. That's an incredible number.
Of course. And the biggest question for them, of course, the switching at the helm, right? That's the biggest deal for any program like Cortland. You lose Kurt Fitzpatrick. He goes up to the D1 level at Colgate. You bring in Coach Blumenauer. He's got a 21-11 record from Franklin and Marshall. And we kind of talked about it earlier. When you talk about this Cortland team that came off a national championship, they lose guys like Cole Burgess and J.J. Lapp on the outside. They're 2 top pass catchers, the 2 best receivers in the country, some would say, at that time in this place. But you had Zach Boyes. You had Zach Boyes under center. So did it, we were wondering, would that matter? They came back and they made another run. We saw that Zach Boyes was enough to get them over the hump. Now, without him under center, without him leading the offensive attack, can they accomplish the same feat? A lot of that TBD, but that rounds out the top 10 of Lindy Sports preseason rankings. And I'm just excited to get things going, man. I think we'll just leave it at that. We're not going to talk too much about who needs to be in, who doesn't. We'll leave it at that, and then we'll get talking about some more individual guys as the season gets closer, brother.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't talk about River Falls today, because we talk about them like every single time on the show. I'm surprised we didn't talk about them today.